of the Ask Gary V show, and I'm super excited. We're on an athletic kick here on the Ask Gary V show. Great show yesterday, and today I have the great pleasure of introducing two incredible women who I've been able to follow because obviously they've done some work through a client here at VaynerMedia, so I've been able to watch from afar and watch some of the content, and I'm really excited to introduce them, and I'm really excited they're here, and they took a train this morning, which there's only one train track in North Dakota, and we'll go into all that. So why don't you introduce yourselves to the Vayner Nation?
I'm Jocelyn. I was going to say, can you tell us apart? I gave it away. I'm Jocelyn, and I'm Monique Lamoureux. We're Lamoureux twins. We play hockey for the U.S. women's team, but we're currently on maternity leave, so we're going to camp in a few weeks trying to get back on the national team.
And so, like, right to the origin story, how did these twins from, and you were born in North Dakota? Yeah. How did these twins from North Dakota get to a place where they get to represent our country at the highest levels in their sport?
Well, we grew up, our dad played Division I hockey at the University of North Dakota. We have 4 older brothers that all played hockey, and then we just kind of followed them around when we were younger. And
you were the youngest?
Yes, so we're 30, and then, well, there's one more birthday this summer. Right now it's 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Our ages.
Your parents were busy.
Yes, they're crazy.
Yes.
Irresponsible.
Yes.
So we would just follow them around, playing whatever sports they were playing, but hockey is the big thing. We have long winters there, and so we just literally play outside on the frozen pond by our parents' house. And we grew up being able to compete at a high level. Went to a boarding school in Minneapolis, right outside Minneapolis.
And at the earliest levels, you were playing obviously mixed with boys and things of that nature.
With all boys, we actually didn't have a girls team to play on, and so there just weren't enough girls playing. So we played with boys up until high school. Yep, and then we went to a boarding school.
I need 1 or 2 great stories of this, because obviously boys are idiots and probably grossly underestimated you, so I'm sure there's got to be, like, I need one, like, classic story that you guys love to tell.
Our dad always told, so we played 3 years of checking, and so when we started checking, we were probably like middle of pack size-wise before all the boys started hitting puberty, and our dad always told us in practice or in a game, he would say, find the biggest kid on the other team and you put them on their ass. Like that. That's what he would tell us. So
did he listen blindly?
Yep. Oh yeah. We listened. And then I specifically remember it was our Pee Wee year, and I played defense, and so I had knocked a kid over pretty good, and our coach came back and goes, hey, don't hit him so hard next time. And then he started walking away, and he goes, don't listen to me. He goes, you keep doing that.
Interesting.
We remember it was Brandon Lunick.
Interesting.
That. And I mean, as they get older and start to realize, like, okay, it's not cool to have girls on your team, or
the dynamic changed a little bit.
The dynamic, it changed quite a bit, and so some of the things, guys, I mean, very not appropriate for.
Yeah, especially in today's environment.
Yeah, very not appropriate. But some of the things they say, like, oh, the girls are the best players on your team. Well, our team's beating yours, so.
I see. So got it. There was from the opposing team. You kind of like talk about that.
Yeah. So I mean, for saying that, I mean, just not the smartest.
And how do you guys think about it? You know, obviously thinking about your age at that point. Where were we? Educate me here a little bit. Where were we with Olympic female hockey?
So the first Olympics for women's hockey was '98. So that was.
So how were we?
We were in first grade.
Were you like fucking pumped?
Yeah.
Did that hit your radar? Were you like, wait a minute?
Yeah, we played a bunch of sports growing up, and our mom was a huge Olympics fan. So whenever the Olympics were on, we were watching not just hockey, we were just watching. Was
your mom one of those people that loved the backstory and like Costas would get her so into like the farm girl, and like now her whole life predicated on 8:18 p.m. to watch the rings to make sure that little farm girl won.
Yeah, we
classic Olympic marketing.
Yeah, our mom just loves it all. So we just whatever sport we were playing at the time, we played a ton of sports growing up. We're gonna go.
What was your favorite sport growing up? Actually, on that note, like what you liked the most, not necessarily what you were best at.
Aside from hockey, I would say soccer and.
But hockey was number one.
Yeah,
it was such a religion in your family. Was that what it was?
If it wasn't the winter time, though, we loved like soccer.
But I mean pure joy, like out of like you. actually, in your like, call it 6 to 12 years old, like if the world said you can only play one thing, not where your opportunities are, like what did you enjoy the most? Was it hockey or was it?
I would say it was hockey and soccer. Yeah, hockey and soccer. Well, in
North
North Dakota, I don't know how it is in New York, but in North Dakota you can play.
It's definitely very different than North Dakota.
Probably, right?
I promise you. I don't know where you're going, but it's different.
You can play like high school varsity sports as a 7th and 8th grader, and so we played varsity soccer and ran cross country on varsity as 7th and 8th graders, and so we were as like 12 and 13-year-olds were playing with juniors and seniors in high school in soccer, and we loved it, and we did really well. So I would say soccer if it wasn't hockey for sure.
And so, let's keep going through the progression. You go to boarding school.
Yep.
Where'd you guys went together?
Yes.
Was there ever a consideration to not be together?
So
did you guys go through that phase?
Because we left home at that age, our parents, we were then 15. They only went that early because we were together. So yeah, it was definitely, I think, a comfort thing for our parents. But we went to Shabby St. Mary's, which is a pretty prestigious hockey
top 5
school.
kind of like school.
Probably Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Zach Parisi. You could name like up teen NHL guys.
Yeah.
And like us two, and then Brianna Decker, Amanda Kessel. We were all on the last 2 Olympic teams, 3 for us, but they've produced a number of pretty good hockey players.
Huge program.
So, yes.
Women's team.
Yes.
And were you guys good? I mean, I know you guys were good. The team.
We won 3 out of 4 national championships the 4 years we were there.
That's good. So let's really focus on the.
We're still mad about it.
I actually want to spend. I'm being
still
serious.
mad about it. Yeah.
I love losing. Like it drives the shit out of me. So I'm actually very curious. What year? So these were your 4 high school years in theory. So which year did you go?
Senior year.
Fuck yeah.
I know.
No.
It was
you were completely convinced. You're like, wow, we're gonna win it all.
We outshot the team 42-11 in the quarterfinals.
On her head.
Yeah, that's probably the best game she's ever played.
Do you hate her deeply?
I don't know who she is, but yeah, I'm still mad about it.
So wait, in the quarterfinals, was like the whole place stunned?
Yeah, because we had.
You guys were 3-time defenders.
Yeah, we're still mad about it.
Is that your most devastating loss?
Oh, no, Sochi gold medal game Olympics still mad about that one. So background around that, we were up 2-0 with about 3 minutes left in the game.
I remember these highlights.
Yeah, it's coming back to you.
Yeah, it came back real hard.
Yeah, they came back, tied it up with like a minute left. We go into overtime, losing overtime. So that was, even though like we wanted.
How often would you think about that game? Like in real life, like this do you think about it like once a year, once a day, once a month?
I mean, I think, well, now that we're parents, it's not as, I would say...
You're able to think about it less?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because you're busy.
Fair enough.
It's perspective.
But
I would say when we think about our hockey career, there's always...
Well, that, of course.
Yeah, like you say you hate losing, you hate losing.
But I'm talking more like back to parent life, right? Like you're driving to the supermarket, and for some reason you think about, like, fuck, what if I just back checked that? Like I just think about the shit in pickup basketball that nobody on earth remembers. So I'm like, man, real fucking greats that there's like, for everybody listening that has any context for hockey, that's an unusual thing to happen in a hockey match, especially at that magnitude. And you start thinking about like what's like, I don't know. I just think about like, do you think about like, oh fuck, like, did I hit the post in the second period and it would have been 3-0? Like I don't know the nuances of the game, of that specific game, but like I just wonder, especially the way you framed it up. Like when you grew up in a family that is framed up the way you guys just framed it up, I don't think people, it's funny. I associate with athletes a lot because of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Like
entrepreneurship was so like I'm a very unique entrepreneur in the fact that entrepreneurship. What's funny? I actually associate with things like women's hockey quite a bit. Let me explain. In the 80s and 90s, entrepreneurship was not a thing. No. This was the thing. It was called school. And you had to go to a good college. This is my horrible report card. So in the 80s, right now, I'm living a very interesting life where entrepreneurship is cool and everybody wants to be one. But like when I was really doing it and sacrificing, that's a bad report card. Like when I was doing that, I was a purebred entrepreneur. As similar as I could get to somebody who would go away to boarding school to be there for hockey, and obviously you have to keep up your grades to be on the team, all that stuff. But like, you know, but it was underrated. Like people thought I was a loser, even though I was, you know, making all this money selling big sports cards on the weekend. But because I got D's and F's, my friends' parents thought I would never amount to anything. It was that much of the religion. Anyway, just knowing how I grew up, where everything, and it wasn't less about my parents because my dad was just working all the time, but it was more like, for me, it was just like, there was nothing, it was just like, it was always in the air. Like, back to that, like, I'm imagining pictures in my head of like you guys eating peas and like trying to score on each other with your brothers, like with the four, like, it's just in the DNA.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of elite athletes and people that are at the tip of the spear, whatever they're doing, I mean, you look at youth sports today, and everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go to, they specialize early, they put their kids in all these things, but then when you look at like the tip of the spear, like who's been successful, they're willing to do what no one else is doing.
Correct.
when they get older, when it's appropriate to be specializing.
Correct.
And everyone thinks they want to do it, but then when you get down to like the day-to-day of what it takes to get to that level,
social
people aren't actually
100%.
willing or wanting to do that. When you get down, when you look at, I mean, even when you get to the top of the top, there's still people not willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, at the top of the top, I'm sure, I mean, again, you guys have better framework than I do, but like I'm so passionate about it, I look at it very carefully. My brother and I also have an NFL sports representation business where we do 25 guys. You know, I'm sure you saw this. I don't know how you guys equate for yourselves how hard you worked or what sacrifices you made, but at the top of the top, when you see that passiveness, you have to marvel at the extreme talent. Right? Like I'm right? Like, you know, I'm sure you've seen people just not put in the work that have made the Olympic team or your competitors, and you're like, fuck, she is just so fucking talented.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those players tend to leave so much on the table, and they could have been a top 10 player all time versus a non-all-star.
Yeah.
That's where the variable comes in.
Or they end up being like a one-time Olympian versus like 2 or 3-time Olympian.
Correct. But I think probably from your perspective, you still marvel at the sheer talent to even get to the top of the top.
Yeah, I mean, we were in New York, was it 2 years ago, it was the Year Out event for Pyeongchang, and we went to,
It was our first NBA game. It was actually the game that Charles Oakley
Got dragged out of Madison Square Garden.
yeah, but we were, you know, a couple seats off, a couple rows off the floor, and I mean, we enjoy sports, but not huge NBA fans, but the speed, and you just don't appreciate it on TV. But when you're like on the floor, like 30 feet away from that.
It's actually my favorite thing about hockey. When I've taken people from other countries to a game, or when I was a kid, just the amount of times that I've serendipitously through business been at a hockey game where somebody rarely watches hockey, has also skated for like at the rink for Christmas. And like within the first 5 seconds, just completely gets flabbergasted at the skill level of the skating needed. It's similar to the speed it takes for somebody to actually be in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean it's impressive. And those they're
huge.
so big.
Yeah.
So and the little space that they have to work in, we were impressed.
What are you guys about now? Like, what is your passion right now? You know, obviously we have, you know, in 2 years this video will be watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. What are you guys passionate about? What are you trying to put into the world?
So we just actually launched our foundation last night. So
Okay,
we
good timing. That was a layup question.
Yeah. Teed it up nice. We're really excited. So we just launched
What's it called? What is it
Monique
about?
and Jocelyn Lamory Foundation, and we've been very fortunate to travel the country with Comcast as ambassadors for the corporate values initiatives, and so we're using our platform as Olympic athletes to give back, and that's been amazing to do on a national level and to travel. But now we basically ask ourselves, what can we do on a day-to-day? Like what are we really doing in our own community? And so we felt like launching a foundation was the way to do that. So we're going to give back. Our first initiative is we're going to announce soon, but probably will be with the school lunch program.
And our credo is cheer for the one behind. So our mom, when we were younger, all the different sports we do, if it was ever something that we were competing against each other, swimming or cross country or whatever it was, I'm going to cheer for the one that's behind, because she didn't want to have to like pick one over the other. And so I think
First of all, I'm already all about your mom, because I'm also by default more underdog nature.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched a lot. It's funny you guys went there. I was about to ask you a question about this. And it's been funny. I noticed the same reason everybody in New York is wearing Steph Curry jerseys, because people are bandwagon fans because they don't have their own self-esteem. And I've watched a lot of parents actually cheer for the kid that's better. And I've always been fascinated by that, because I love this cheer for the one. Like, that would absolutely be the way for me. So I'm a huge fan of your mom.
She's great. She makes a good latte too. Yeah.
Really?
One does lattes, yeah.
Is that like a thing, or you got this?
Oh no, we used to.
India
Yeah,
knows.
India, you know about Linda's lattes?
Yeah, their mom made me a latte. They're really good.
India, why don't we open one in Portland?
Great, I love
Me,
it.
you, and the mom team up, a three-headed monster.
Cool.
I'm telling you, I know how to I can help.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of something that, for us, it kind of transcended sports and just into other parts of our lives. I remember at the time, I didn't think anything of it, but in 6th grade, there was a kid that sat next to me. We sat alphabetical order. He had Down syndrome. His name was Justin, and he would sit by himself at lunch. And I was like, "Hey, Justin, why don't you come sit with us?" So we sat at a table of 10 girls. He'd come and sit with us, and he kind of became the cool kid. So that was in 6th grade. By 8th grade, he would just migrate from table to table.
Love you.
And then unbeknownst to us, I think his mom or grandma sent a letter to the school, and then they sent it to our parents. I didn't tell my parents about it. It was
It's life.
just be nice. And so then actually we were doing an event a couple months ago, and his grandma comes to the event, and then we're doing a quick meet and greet afterwards, and she was like, I'm Justin's grandma. I'm like, oh my God, it's Justin's grandma. So it's just little things like that where we just try to be nice and just be a good person. And
kindness is so underrated.
Yes.
I can't. I push it so heavily. I'm fascinated by people not understanding how life actually works.
Well, it just doesn't make sense. What?
It makes no practical sense.
like that.
Well, why? Because unlike the three of us, we were fortunate enough to have a situation where we weren't hurting inside and it wasn't manifesting. When I watch people not be kind, I deploy empathy and sadness for that person, because I'm like, what's really going on back home is super not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's the manifestation of a bad environment or bad parenting or a terrible circumstance, you know? And so, nonetheless, what is the biggest fight you two ever got into? Go.
Against each other.
Against each other.
Against each other. Well, you know what? I'll share this. I had braces, and
And you
I
did it?
also
I probably should have though.
I also had to wear headgear when I was at home. I didn't have to wear it in public, at least. And
I don't know
we would make
why
fun
don't you
of
have to
her.
wear. Oh, the headgear for braces.
Yeah,
Understood.
We would
Like
make
some
fun
old
of her
1980s
and go like
shit.
this.
Yeah, all my brothers would
They
make
just
fun
call
of
you
me.
this.
Yeah.
You guys were so unstoppable. I always think about the reason I'm unstoppable emotionally is all the bad stuff happened so early. Didn't speak English, I was an immigrant, got picked up. Terrible in school, everybody thinks I'm a loser. Wasn't athletically inclined enough that very quickly my hand-eye coordination skills went away by 3rd grade and I'm losing. And so it's loss, that by the time I became a grown-up, I'm like, fuck all of you. Fuck. and just thinking about having the luxury of having 4 alpha athletic brothers be older than you, I'm like, wow, these ladies were
They
fundamentally
wouldn't take it
unstoppable.
easy on us. Everything was a competition. Getting to the front seat of the car was a competition. So the key though was to not be first, because you were just going to get blown up and out of the way by someone checking away. Or if we ever wanted to tag along and play with them, it was, well, if you can't keep up, then you can't play with us. So that was that was just our normal growing up.
Which brother are you closest to?
I would say it's different for different reasons.
Of course.
Depending on, 2 of them still play overseas.
It's awesome. Where?
One's going to Germany now, and the other oldest Phil is he's in Austria, and the youngest one is going to Germany now.
Understood.
Was in Austria, so.
Of the 4 of them, what's the debate of who's of the 6 kids, what is the macro debate? Net. Don't give me the politically correct, like, oh, she's the best at skating, and he was the best at puck skating. Like, who is considered of the six in the family dynamics, like your own little text chain or dinner table, like, inevitably there has to be a debate of like net, like rankings.
Well, Phil was a goalie, so he doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
He's like
right.
out, and then
how does he feel about that?
He was, I don't know.
Why was he a goalie? Like,
Our dad was a goalie.
Yeah.
And was he the oldest?
Yes.
Makes all
So if
the
you
sense.
like got in, if we would play street hockey, so like our games would inevitably end. So like either Phil would break all the goalie sticks because he'd like break them over the net because he was a spaz.
Right.
Even though he's super low key and like laid back, total spaz.
See, I associate with that. I'm pretty, in the scheme of, don't confuse my energy with like me being pretty chill in the way I do things in real life, but in sports, I'm completely unhinged.
Yeah.
Like to the point where right now I actually don't want to do sports anymore really, because what I've evolved into is actually genuine, this is so dark, I genuinely want to injure people. Like think about it. That is like think about like how uncomfortable that was to come out of my mouth. Like that is so remarkably inappropriate, and like and my genuine truth.
Well, so then our brother Jock would always like kind of cross the line a little bit with like slashing someone. So he
He would have hurt somebody.
He would have hurt someone.
Like this.
And then Paul was
I might be
good
a
to
seventh
like
child.
Paul was good to like throw an elbow at someone and like really get mad. And then Mario would just I don't know what Mario would do.
Who'd you guys root for? The North Stars?
Not really.
Well, they were gone.
Oh yeah, because they were in Texas and then
Jesus
Dallas, yeah.
Go ahead.
We're just fans.
Really? You guys didn't have a family team?
Yeah, not like
Really?
diehard.
Really? No, nobody? Not dad down? Nobody on a team?
Well, I guess Phil liked the Leafs, but we just.
But back to our dad, he would like when we were playing checking. If someone like got the best of us or like knocked us over, he goes, "You don't get back, you get even." So like, you get like better. Yeah, or just like if you're gonna take a penalty, he goes, "Make it worth it," type of thing. So growing up, like that way, like in college, when we like in high school, college, and a little bit on the national team like that, we would get ourselves in a little bit of trouble sometimes because we were just like, "I'm gonna."
Beat the fuck out of somebody.
I'll show you, yeah, type thing. And then my dad's like, "Why did you do that?" I'm like, well, and then you think that was like for so many years, your dad was telling you all these things. But,
Who's the best player that you played against? Just for your own person, just your own personal. Each of you, I'm just curious, like what gal, like, and it could be at any level, like when you got the boarding school or an Olympic game or like a singular game, like. Obviously, that one goalie that stood on her head, but but in a net, I'm just genuinely fascinated.
I think on Team Canada, Megan Augusta, I think year in and year out has been one of their best players, and kind of has been a little under the radar, in my opinion, or I would say underappreciated a little bit.
Yeah, because you see the subtle things she does. Do you feel like
she's just consistently
on the score sheet
all the time, and so I think. One of our coaches last year had asked, like, okay, who are we watching for on your team? And I was like, number 2, like thinking,
like how do you
obviously
understand
like their captain Poulin, she scored 2 goals in Vancouver. We lost 2-0. She scored 2 goals when we were in Sochi. We lost 3-2. So like, of course everyone's paying attention to her.
Yeah, but I'm like, Augusta, she's pretty good.
Yeah,
she's doing pretty good.
Which team globally is emerging? Finland.
Yeah. So this last year at the World Championships, every World Championships has been a U.S.-Canada final, except this year it was a U.S.-Finland final, which went to a shootout. So Finland's quickly, they've been pretty good, and then the last like year and a half or so, they've really stepped up, and then, like everyone just assumes it's a U.S.-Canada final.
And where are we on the landscape of a professional women's league globally?
We're working on it right now, so I don't know how familiar you are with what's transpired.
I'm not, but Budweiser is our client at VaynerMedia, and we had a very interesting campaign that we just launched. Post you might have saw.
Interesting is a subtle way to put it. I mean, we think it's amazing.
Thank you. So we're really excited about it. We recognized what I'm sure very extreme in soccer, and definitely to a lesser degree, but clearly in culture, from my standpoint, happens to the Olympic women's hockey team, which is, and then the next, yay, or like devastation, and then the next day, we'll see you in 4 years. Yep. And just when we had the hypothesis, when I saw the team working on it, and they came up with a great idea to support it post the World Cup, I did my own Googling, because I mean, I'm pretty in tune with like a lot of things, let alone sports, and did not know that that even the league existed, right? That's just on it. That's full transparency. Yeah. And then when I looked into it, looking at those attendance numbers, and then just thinking about the star. You know, these wrestling figures are here for a reason. I actually believe that any sport can capture America's attention if you know how to build superstars. Yep. So like a lot of what's been interesting about watching you with Comcast, that's how I think, right? Tony Hawk, right? Kelly Slater. The 1982 NBA Finals was on tape delay in America. The 1982 NBA Finals was not live in America because there was that little interest in the NBA. And then David Stern, with obviously you need Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan to be who they are, but guess what? You know, the Iceman George Gervin and Connie Hawkins and Dr. J were pretty and Pistol Pete were pretty remarkable. They weren't in a framework that understood how to build. It's what's happening in baseball. Baseball is, America is becoming more Hispanic, Latin every day. Yep. The greatest athletes in American sport that are Hispanic are in Major League Baseball. Yep. And yet, they don't know how to use Vladimir Guerrero or Fernando Tatis Jr. or Javier Baez. So I'm always fascinated. I genuinely believe America, is a fame star culture. And when you have Mike Tyson and America cares, boxing's huge. And when you don't, they don't. And so, I genuinely believe that that women's athletics across the board are really fascinating at the professional level, because I think of it as star power for the WNBA, this Women's Soccer League, whatever you're about to tell me about the hockey league. Like, that to me is like, how do we do what Vince McMahon does, which is he makes us care about Hulk Hogan and Randy the Macho Man Savage and Andre the Giant, and they're not even actually, that's a soap opera.
Shawn Michaels, Heartbreak Kid.
Right? That's a soap opera. And when you and it's a framework. And so when you have Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and Andre, you have an era. And then you go cold for a while. And then when you're lucky enough to get the charisma of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, you have that era, right?
The Undertaker.
That to me is fascinating about sports in America.
Well, if you think of like hockey, not just women's hockey, but I think hockey's kind of the last professional sport where it's a team. Don't bring any attention to yourself. Don't have like any personality. And I feel like hockey's kind of like the last sport that's finally kind of being accepting of that, because you look at PK Subban and the amount of negative attention people he gets for, he's off on his own, he's doing his own, people are allowed to have personality.
The NHL was one of VaynerMedia's first clients in 2009, and I remember Brendan Shanahan had me come and speak to all the kids that were about to get drafted, and I was spitting all this thoughts about what social media can do and all this stuff that is now accepted. And to your point, and it's the same thing in baseball. Yep. And it's the same thing for rookies in any sport. Yep. Right? There's more, us normal people don't understand the judgment pressures inside of a locker room that go do anything that isn't on team. And the NBA is the one place where that is embraced, and that is the biggest reason it has exploded in the direction it has. Because there is individualism that's accepted while being able to, in parallel, team 100%.
Yep. On top of having individualism and not it being judged, but then being able to promote it within the team,
and letting merit play out, right? Like, individualism in basketball is really fascinating. Tim Duncan just announced yesterday he's going to be an assistant coach. The level of superstar to go to assistant coach, not head coach, hasn't been done at the level of Tim Duncan, but that's his DNA. He was always a quiet superstar, right? Anyway, nonetheless, please tell me about it, because I'm actually very fascinated. What is the current state?
So there used to be 2 leagues in North America. So there's a Canadian League and an American League.
And what were they called? What were they called?
CWHL, the Canadian Women's Hockey League, and so that they folded in the spring. So they just folded, and then the NWHL, National Women's Hockey League still exists. There's a team in Minnesota, and then it's 3 teams on the East Coast: Buffalo, New York, and
Boston, Connecticut.
Boston, 4 teams.
Wait, Boston, Connecticut.
New York,
There is a New York team.
and Buffalo, so it's 4 teams on the East Coast.
Yeah, and
So there's 5 teams in the league.
There's 5
Yeah.
teams, and so that league we feel is some of the top players in the world. We feel like it's not a sustainable league. You have to have proof of other insurance to be able to play. And it's
Were you guys in that league?
No,
We've opted to not play in that league.
Understood. When did that league start?
4 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago.
I see. So it started at a time where you were in a different place in your career as well.
Yes, yeah, and it's just not. We're both married.
We're not moving to a different city to go play.
I guess to that, right. That was to my point.
Grand.
I mean, it would have been
Yeah.
an interesting conversation potentially at 22.
Yeah,
It would have been interesting how you would have
yeah.
debated it, its values and its merits. But understood.
But so right now, currently, anyone's making it's between like $4,000 and $12,000 for the season.
I understand.
So
And the attendance numbers must be really uncomfortably low.
yes, I don't know them off the top. of my head,
Minnesota
but
has
less than-
decent numbers, but then
decent as in less than 2,000.
Yes.
around,
That would make
around
sense to me.
2,000.
Knowing
So-
enough about minor league hockey and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have opted. We've created a players' association. It's an official players' association. It's incorporated all that, and the top 100. It's 170 players are in the association, but it's like the top players in the world are a part of it. And
You look backwards and find the right humans to start a league with as a partnership.
yes. Yeah. So we're operating as sustainable.
I'm such an entrepreneur. Like, I'm going to start. Like literally, I'm right now. I'm like, how do I start a women's hockey league at this point? That's literally, I'm like so one-dimensional. Everything's yes. Okay.
So that's what we're
fucking
doing. So
cool.
we're currently, the
Good for you.
condition of the PA is to create playing opportunities next season while players sit out of the current professional situation in North America. So that's, in short, what's going on.
Good for you. That's really neat. I may want to talk to you about that off podcast. All right. I mean it. It's super interesting. As we're wrapping up, I want to give you a few minutes to talk about things that you wanted to talk about in here versus me nerding out on the nuances of your guys' professional hockey career.
Well, I think, as
Let's
Monique
get one
touched
goal
on,
on into. I apologize. Go ahead.
as Monique touched on, we've done the cheer for the one behind. That's our mission. That's what we're all about, and challenging people to do that, whether that's in a small capacity on a day-to-day thing, or it's on a larger capacity, like we've created a foundation to try and truly make a tangible difference, something that we can see, but it's also being able to raise awareness around issues and not being afraid to speak about things.
Will you guys be paying those issues?
Sorry.
For the
Are you guys-
foundation.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
so,
So
you know,
we've kept it vague where we basically we want to be able to pick and choose what we want to
What
get
you get
back to,
passionate about.
and
Right.
so like one of the things we've
I
been
see.
talking about is like the school lunch program. So if we're looking at how we might be able to fund that in our hometown, because there's some of the schools are like it's like over 80% qualify for free and reduced school lunch, and so if we can get back to those programs. So at a fundamental level, like kids are expected to go to school and learn. If you're hungry, it's pretty hard to learn.
yes, it is.
So I know how I am when I get hangry. So I imagine kids are having a tough time learning. So just at a fundamental level, if we can get kids just starting at the same point as everybody else at an education standpoint, and I think that's something we're pretty passionate about.
I want to do a quick speed round when we get this first call in, first and last. What are you binge watching?
You know what? Stranger Things, I did that one. I'm still with a 6-month-old. I don't binge watch anything.
I get it.
But I'm like 2 episodes into Stranger Things.
Nice. Two's better than zero.
Chernobyl was a good one.
Oh my god, everybody's
Good one.
hitting me up about
Yeah.
that. And since I got lucky enough and left that area right before it happened.
Oh,
yeah, very lucky. One more second, I apologize. What about your favorite social media platform?
I like Instagram.
I think different ones for different reasons. So I feel like Facebook is more like friends
Yeah.
that you actually know, and Instagram more visual day to day, and then Twitter to want to catch up on the news or like
Yeah,
some
right.
So
education
you
on.
play with all three.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we lost it, so I'll get one more binge question while you type. Who was your favorite athlete growing up? No politically correct answers this time.
Jackie Joyner Kersey was definitely one. Our mom gave us her book, so she would have been. We were too young to remember her competing, but we actually got to meet her at one of our Comcast events.
That's awesome.
We got to meet her last year. We were just like,
you couldn't wait to take that picture and send it to your mom.
Yes. We actually brought her on a trip with us.
So Jackie Joyner Kersey for you.
I was gonna say I love gymnastics.
Okay.
So like the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
I mean, we still nerd out over the Olympics.
This is
Helen. Jackie Joyner Kersey. So good. Such an
Hello.
Helen,
No.
you're on the Ask Gary Vee show. How are you? And she hung up. All right. Helen was, let's call her. No, I want to call. Hold on, this is a moment. Call her right now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Did she say no?
I think she was stumped. Oh, you think she said no and we dialed the number wrong? Or
Couldn't hear you.
Got it. Let's try it again.
It's not one.
This is really good.
Is it a 701 number?
No. It's a 614. This is exciting now.
Just gonna put us voice now.
Hello?
Helen?
No, this is not Helen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will not call you again. Sorry.
Okay.
Andy? Let's go to the next one. Clearly mistyped that. It's tough for your first call ever. You wore this amazing banana shirt today. You like got this big at back. Who's this?
This is Ryan.
Ryan?
That's Ryan.
Holy crap, are you serious?
We are not joking, Ryan. Say hello, please.
What's up, Ryan?
Hi, Ryan.
Hey, it's Ryan Snyder. How's it going?
Doing
How are
really
you?
well. What can we answer for you, brother?
Hey, so I have twin girls, 3-year-old girls,
All right.
It's a good start.
and and I am trying my best to instill confidence in them at an early age, allowing them to be as individuals, but also at the same time building the uniqueness as twins as well. And so my question is also to you guys, and also to Gary too. You have a daughter, and my question is how do I build that confidence in them as individuals, but also at the same time allow their uniqueness to flow out as twins as well?
Well, I'll take the confidence piece of it, and I don't think as 3-year-olds, I think you do what you can as the best you can as a parent to teach them right from wrong, and you let them struggle within a certain capacity so they learn to be independent and learn how to do things on their own. But
Problem solve.
problem solve. But confidence as you get old, it's not something someone can give you, and it's not something someone can take away from you. And I think that's how you build security and confidence. And it's not something that should change day to day. Obviously, your confidence can go up and down with different things going on in life. But I think, that's a tough thing that adults struggle with every day. But
Right.
I think of when we were younger, our dad always we would call it the face in the mirror speech. So whatever it was that we were doing, or whether it was a game, school, whatever activity you were in, it was always if you can look yourself in the mirror and say you did the best you can, or you put your best foot forward and you worked your hardest, then even though the outcome might not be what you wanted it to be, you can be satisfied with your effort and you can't be disappointed in yourself. And I think by having that mindset, I think that helps create confidence. As far as the twin question goes, our parents always put everything in us together, and we just always did everything together, and our mom always said 2 is better than 1. So we were always unique in that aspect, that we had the same group of friends, we did all the same sports and whatnot, and some twins don't get along like that or spend a lot of time together. So I think just letting that develop over time, because they might end up having all the same interests, they might not, and just as they get older and have their personalities develop, I think that you'll kind of find your way with that.
Awesome.
Thank
you very much.
I think, just to add my 2 cents, because I'm super passionate about, obviously, I really can't speak with any authority on the twin level, but there are 2 things that stand out to me. Number 1, I do think reverse engineering individuals at scale is something I'm very passionate about, having all these different employees, and there's so many different dynamics. And I think it is a fine line between the two is better than one, which I think the optimism that breeds, I think, is incredible, and I think is, it's always better to lean into optimism versus pessimism and cynicism, but where I'm about to go with the rest of that sentence is actually the answer to confidence. I think the number one vulnerability in society is delusion. I think that parents are creating a remarkable level of delusion over the last 20 years because parents have become so micromanaging of their kids' feelings and actually know their day-to-days too much, and are trying to protect them from the world, which unfortunately is fundamentally impossible. And I believe that we have 1 to 2 full generations right now that are closer to zoo animals than they are humans. And so, as I was listening to the stories, as we were talking here, I think one of the great things that is true about the three of us upbringing was we were in frameworks because of circumstances where losing wasn't demonized or protected against. It was the merit of the outcome which got us comfortable with the idea of, which meant by the time we were actually 22, we actually knew that that was part of the variable. And it is remarkably stunning to me to watch the enormity of 22-year-olds that go into the world who demonize and fear losing or setbacks because they've been in an over-coddled fake framework environment where grades have been the only variable, or 7th place trophies feel close to a 1st place trophy, or mommy and daddy pay for Uber or the apartment, and we are just in a very entitled ecosystem. I think the biggest thing you can do for those 3-year-olds to create self-esteem and confidence is to make them be in an environment where losing is reality and almost even put on a pedestal without it being something that they dwell on post the outcome.
You have to learn how to fail and learn how to lose and learn
in a real way, not in a fake way. Like the amount of parents that I'm watching, like Gary, they hear me talking about this and they'll give me the full 15-sentence, email, and it's like, I let my kids lose, and it's some convoluted fake loss.
Yeah.
Like they lost. Yeah, it's like they lost in Color Wars this summer. I'm like, bro, that's like, I'm like, cool, but like, let's like really get underneath this. And this gets into athletics. It's fascinating. The amount of parents that are so delusional, thinking their kids going to the league. Yeah, I mean, this is why you're reacting like this as an actual professional athlete. Like, breaking news. Everybody listening and watching right now, your kid's not going to the league.
Whatever league that is.
Whatever league that is. Because the math is uncomfortably against you. And so the amount of parents that are wrapping their self-esteem into their kids' outcomes in school and in sports. This is one huge game of mass insecurity at the parent level. You want those 2 girls to be happy? Never let your mom, siblings, teachers, or best friends' points of view on your children.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's one thing that I really tried my hardest at, even with them, just the basics of falling. I instantly say to them, hey, that was a fantastic fall. Like, you fell, yeah, you got a scrape, you got a boo-boo, that sucks. But let's continue forward and let's continue pressing on.
And you need to find the balance between probably what these 2 amazing gals grew up with, which was there was no fantastic fall. Yeah, so I do think this is where, and by the way, let me just say this as I keep on this rant. Giving parenting advice is the least interesting thing on earth. Everybody, it's just not interesting. But it's like a fun macro debate, not a micro debate. So before I go any further, you do you. However, my point of view in the macro is all of us have to decide what a fantastic boo-boo is versus a boo-boos are real. Like, here's a Band-Aid, let's go, and everything in between. Like, I think we're in a culture right now where fantastic boo-boo and is very much more common, and it's politically incorrect to do what their dad did or what I believe in of get the fuck up. And and you gotta know your kid, and some kids respond incredibly well to get the fuck up, some don't. You gotta stay in listening mode. But this is just real life. This is just real life. Like, I think my mom is the greatest mother of all time. I'm the byproduct of it. And the one time my mom tried to enter a conversation of how I should parent, it was a 3-second conversation of, shut the fuck up, mom. And I realized when I did that to somebody who I think is my hero, is the best mom on earth, I was excited because I was like, wow, I really believe in the shit that I talk about. I am not going to let anybody penetrate my mindset. It's very cute that you fly in on the weekends once in a while and have a point of view. You're not here 24. It's the same reason that I even tread lightly with my opinions to my wife, who's there actually every second, versus me flying in on the weekends. It's like the one place I'm like, fuck, this sucks. Like, for me to stay and not be a hypocrite, I got to be thoughtful here. And that's what I would say, bro. Kids and everybody needs to feel safe, but not entitled. And that fucking fine line is hard as fuck. But if you keep repeating that sentence, it allows you to have multiple moves. The biggest issue that parents have now is they have one move. I think if you go fantastic boo-boo and get the fuck up and you mix them up, you've got a much better chance than one or the other.
And that's the main reason why I get up and keep going. That's they have to keep up. I mean, it's going because I've seen these kids time and time again where they'll sit in one spot and just cry for 10 minutes about this one boo-boo, where there's plenty more opportunities to go ahead and keep playing and move forward too.
I've already convinced my 6-year-old who lives for basketball that he will never dunk, and that took 2 months of being okay with him. I mean, he's also his dad's son. Like, he cries 24/7. Like, I have so many, all my emotional intelligence now is my greatest strength, but from 6 to 15, I couldn't control feeling everything, and so I just fucking cried. Every single thing I lost in, from 1982 to 1989, I cried. Pool, cried. Football, cried. Tennis, cried. Cried for kids that got picked on, that's why I love you so much. Cried for kids that got picked on in school. A kid's getting picked on at lunch, and I'm over here crying for that person. Like, couldn't control them. So my son's got that thing too. So telling him he's not going to dunk now is painful as fuck. Most parents don't want micro pain. They don't realize they're creating macro pain. I'm okay. It hurts like hell watching him cry for 20 minutes, full steam of like, basically, fuck you, daddy, why can't I dunk? And the answer is genetics, bro. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Sorry.
But he also, and this is crazy for me to say, I can't even believe this happened, he almost actually beat me in pop and shot basketball this weekend because his jump shot is so insane because he stopped dunking on his little fucking thing after I finally got through to him, and he's shooting from such range, and I'm like, and his Euro step and his left hand, and now he will be an unbelievably good pickup basketball player one day, and that's awesome, And so like to me, that's something parents need to bring into the framework versus what I see 90% doing, which is the reverse of what I just did, which is you'll dunk one day, son. You're gonna dunk, and then me paying because of my ability, like NBA coaches to teach him when he's in 8th grade on one-on-one, and then somewhere around 15, he's like, I'm fucking delusional.
Well, if you just use sport, like for us, like sports is like it's a microcosm of life. You use it to teach, being a good teammate, take direction from others, listen to your coaches, having a good attitude, working hard, accountability, all those things transcend.
You want to talk about one that, like, I know we're so and I gotta run, but like, you know what my favorite one is, and I'm sure you've done this. You know my favorite thing that people learn about in sports that nobody ever says out loud? Knowing when not to listen to a coach.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard anybody say that, and when I watch like kids, or just watching, I'm like I literally watch that way. Like, I watch. Like, I've hired people here when they've been interns by the way they've played. Nate is my partner in Empathy Wines because as an intern, the way he played volleyball made me know he would be good, and it played out. Like, I'm being serious. Like knowing when to not listen to the coach is such a subtle skill.
Be respectful
Correct.
at the same time.
Well, it's funny.
And pretend like you're listening.
No, you nailed it. You know what? I think about this. I was the most destructive force in my classrooms from 3rd grade to senior year. In our senior breakfast, which was a really cool tradition at our high school, somebody got up and said, like, my favorite thing about high school was hoping I was in Gary Vaynerchuk's class because I knew that he would always waste 7 to 13 minutes per class. The fact that I was able to do that and still be liked by my teachers, like, is now in hindsight so much of what I am. similar to what you just said, which is knowing when not to listen to the coach, but not being an issue.
Yep, exactly. And you just
Because players on the field still know.
Yep.
You know, like, and that confidence, like, so anyway, nonetheless, thanks for the call. Ladies, thank you so much for being on here. This is so vibrato. I really appreciate it. This is really fun. This is how we wrap up. You get to ask the question of the day. Any question you want for the audience, fire away.
We were talking, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but in women's professional sports, it doesn't have to be hockey.
Yep.
What do you think is like the tipping point to bringing it to the next level? I think you're starting to see in the NWSL right now, but what do you, as a professional entrepreneur, what do you think?
Well, they're going to answer it. I think, they're going to answer it. You'll get thousands of comments, and you'll see that.
If you're in your mom's basement and you're 40, just don't even bother commenting and saying whatever you have to say.
You mean you're going cliche the other way of like a disrespectful comment?
Yeah.
Understood.
Don't even bother.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's real. Thank you for that question. I'll leave it with this PS. It's where I went earlier. I actually think under the radar sports are far more interesting to me. I'm far more interested in things that aren't top 5 right now, because people don't understand that Ninja matters for esports, even though it's Fortnite and not necessarily even Overwatch or League of Legends. Like, it's star power. That's what's going to take it to the next level. It's Jackie Joyner Kersey. It's long nails. It's Mary Lou Retton. It's these things. It's what the Olympics do. They take America and they do a mini documentary. It's what 24/7 was for boxing, right? You got people that had no interest seeing like, wait a minute, Manny Pacquiao's got a cute little kid. I'm rooting for it's storytelling in contemporary places. The reason I got excited about like, oh, maybe I should get involved in this league is I'm like, okay, and then I'll do a deal with Facebook, and it'll only air on Facebook because that's where the new attention is, and that's just like cable, which helped other sports. Like, it's about storytelling and attention. But I'll let them answer. Awesome. I'm good. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.